program for all America, brought to you by Ivory Soap, advised by more doctors for baby's skin and yours. 99 and 44/100% pure. It floats. And by extra rich liquid Prel shampoo for hair that looks radiantly alive. And now here he is, Mr. This Is Your Life himself, Ralph Edward.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. Well, let's look at some faces in our studio audience. Would you imagine that this woman came from a small town in Hungary during last year's revolution and is now working in a department store in Los Angeles? Or this man, what could his story be? Is he a coal miner, an insurance broker, a millionaire? Or this beautiful girl? Would you say she's a Hollywood starlet or is studying philosophy at the University of California? These are typical American faces, faces you pass on the street every day of your lives. But how little most of us can tell from just a face. Now, take this face, for instance. Would you say that this is the face of a war hero or that of a school teacher in a small rural community? Well, let's find out. What is your name, sir? What is your name?
My name is Randall Harris.
Mr. Harris, would you please tell us whether we're correct? Are you a school teacher, sir?
Yes, sir, I am a school teacher.
And where do you teach?
At Paso Robles.
Paso Robles, California.
California.
Well, we're right on 2 counts. You're a school teacher in a small rural community.
And you're right on the 3rd count, Ralph. This man was a great hero of World War II. One of only 2,000 American Rangers, as valiant a fighting unit as ever bore American arms.
There's the voice of someone who knows your face and speaks with great authority. Mr. Harris, do you recognize it? He was one of our greatest generals in World War II. You'll see this man later on, and you'll see many more faces that you know and love in the next half hour, because tonight, Randall Harris of Paso Robles, California, this is your life. Randall Harris, if you'll come down to our stage, we'll start your thrilling story and find out how a shy, retiring boy with a tremendous handicap became a leader of men in the heat of battle. But first, we want to show you how a little girl loves ivory. Each second of a man's life holds eternity in its grasp. You've faced eternity many times, Randall Harris. This is your life. Eternity on the beachhead at Anzio as a member of the 4th Battalion of Darby's Rangers. And your first second of eternity in this little frame house in Goodridge, North Dakota, March 1st, 1915. When you're 2 years old, you moved where, Randall?
To Iowa.
And what was the name of the town?
Pocahontas, Iowa.
What was it?
Pocahontas, Iowa.
Pocahontas, Iowa. A farm community of 1,800 people. You were a blue-eyed, tow-headed child who stamped his foot when he wanted to talk. Many times, stamping your foot was the only way you could get attention because from the age of 4, you develop a speech block, which results in considerable stammering.
But you didn't let this get you down, did you, Rand? Hi, Rand. Let's go fishing in Lizard Creek.
It's been a long time since the Greasy Spoon was together, Rand.
The Greasy Spoon, what's that, Randall? What was the Greasy Spoon?
My old gang of buddies.
Kind of a club formed by 3 others and you. Well, it's about time the Greasy Spoon held a reunion, so come on out. Don Dilmuth of Encinitas, California.
Hi, Rand.
One of them. And Ben Thompson of Davenport, Iowa. Richard Kennedy of Redwood City, California. Let's see, the last time all of you fellas were together, about 16 years ago, wasn't it, Don Dilmuth?
That was right, Ralph. I remember Rand when he was, one of the smallest ones of the gang.
Yeah?
Yeah, and he used to tear things apart and put them back together again, you know. And remember, Rand, you used to have your backyard full of bicycles all the time?
Sure do.
Yeah, all the kids used to bring them over for Rand to repair.
Oh.
Yeah. Rand was quite a runner, too, Ralph. He ran on the high school track team running the mile. I recall some of those races, Rand, when you obviously didn't have any chance of placing, but you went on just as hard as you could and finished. A lot of us would have just dropped out.
Rand, you had perseverance in everything that you attempted. And Ralph, even though Rand had a speech impediment at the time, he still sang in the choir of the First Methodist Church every Sunday for over 4 years.
Well, now, Greasy Spoon Gang, you will all have a chance to really reminisce at the party in Randall's honor at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel right after the show. All your pals have been staying there, Rand. You'll be anxious to see them, won't you?
Sure will.
Okay, gang. We'll see you a little later. In 1932, you graduate from Pocahontas High School and enroll in the speech clinic at the State University of Iowa. Like many other young Americans during this Depression year, you must work your way through school. What kind of jobs did you have, Rand?
So I washed dishes and took care of the gymnasium, checked out equipment, mowed lawns, shoveled sidewalks, anything I could get.
The old perseverance showing through again, eh?
It was this perseverance of Randall's that made me realize that there was a lot of fine stuff underneath his quiet exterior.
Can you guess who that is, Randall? He was the head of the State University of Iowa's speech clinic back in 1932. Now, Vice President of Gibraltar Savings and Loan in Beverly Hills, here's your professor, Dr. Lee Travis. Dr. Travis, you say that Randall was a... What'd you say?
He said he was surprised.
You said to put it mildly, is that it? You say that Randall was a quiet boy?
Ralph, after all these years, 25 of them to be exact, we could say now that Randall is one of the most shy, timid, bashful boys I ever knew. When you consider this record of his, this battleground record, it stands in great contradiction to the personality he expressed at that time. It shows, as we've been saying here, you've been saying here, Ralph, that you cannot tell too much by a man's face or by superficial observations what he really has. Because down deep, even then, we thought at Iowa, we realized that this boy had great stuff. So Randall, if I might slip into my old preaching role as a professor, could I say that you are a shining example of how great perseverance and effort can overcome the bashful ways of a lad and become a great man.
Thank you, Dr. Lee Travis. You leave the State University of Iowa in 1933. The years go by, the face matures, less shy now because you're on the road to licking your handicap. December 7th, 1940, 1 year before Pearl Harbor. An important day for you, wasn't it, Rand?
That's when I enlisted in the Army.
That's right, in the Iowa National Guard that day,
Yes,
I think, wasn't it?
that's right.
And with your usual determination, you tell your family that you're going to be the best enlisted man the Army's ever known.
I might be a little prejudiced, but I would say that Rand was the best. Hi, buddy.
Recognize that voice, Rand? You haven't heard it in almost 15 years. One of your best friends all through the war, front and center, Paul Perry of Havertown, Pennsylvania. Now, you two fellas first met in Ireland, didn't you, Paul?
Yes, that is right. Then we moved to Scotland. In Scotland, we trained under the British commandos using commando tactics.
The Rangers, known as one of America's fightingest outfits. How did you happen to join the Rangers, Randall?
Well, it was the bid that offered the greatest challenge of anything that could possibly do.
You were turned down, weren't you, by the officers' school?
I was turned down as an officer candidate. I was turned down by the Air Corps, but still I wanted to get into something where I felt I could really do something.
Now, we've said that first impressions are often misleading. What was your first impression of Randall as a Ranger, Paul?
Well, Ralph, I must confess that I thought, as all Rangers thought, that here was a guy who just wasn't going to make it. How could he last? And then as, you know, in the early months of training, it was told us that we could expect a 13% casualty list as a result of our early training. And yet here was Randall, a very mild-mannered, quiet, soft-spoken. He just wasn't the type.
Well, how did he do?
Well, he was great. When many of the great fellows that were in the Rangers were falling to the wayside, Here was Randall with sheer determination and guts to go ahead and do it. He didn't know what the word quit meant. And as time went on, the fellows looked up to Randall and realized that here was a man that was gentle and yet was a gentleman. And he was just as rugged as any rugged ranger around. And boy, am I glad to see you.
Training may be tough, but it's needed for what's to come. How you, Randall Harris, become a true leader among men, we'll find out in just a moment. Thank you, Paul Perry. You're now radio TV director for American Stores Company, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Well, now, you and Randall reminisce as we pause for just a moment for these important words from Prell Shampoo. Back to This Is Your Life, Randall Harris, warrior and gentleman. November 1942, your training completed. You set out with the original 1st Ranger Battalion, commanded by Colonel William Darby. Destination, North Africa. February 9th, 1943, Sened Station, Tunisia. The battalion receives its first battle orders on the Tunisian front. What were those orders, Randall?
There was an outpost to knock out that was way across the desert about 15 miles back. And it was our job to go and knock out the Italians that were guarding the pass. Behind the pass was a large German panzer division. And we were to knock out the outpost and stir up the Germans and get them started moving.
The capture of Sened Station is vital to American strategy.
Yes, it was.
The fighting is fierce as you reach your objective, 14 miles behind enemy lines. Screams of the wounded and dying can be heard high above the roaring sounds of gunfire and exploding mortar fire. Toward the end of the fighting, a buddy of yours, Garland Ladd, is hit. What did you do, Randall?
Well, I think we all took turns to help carry him back. He had his foot shot nearly off.
You picked him up and carried him back across the rocky hills. Ladd was unconscious during
He broke the Ranger code to carry me back to safety.
Well, now, Randall Harris, the man you carried on your back through the Tunisian night, and whom you haven't seen since, Garland Ladd, now of Lincoln Park, Pennsylvania. This about the Ranger Code. What is the Ranger Code you're referring to, Garland Ladd?
Well, Ralph, in Rangers, the code that we had was that when a man was injured seriously, when we were on a raid, that the other men would not stop to carry him back, due to the fact that it would endanger their lives and the fact that they couldn't accomplish their mission wherever we may be. However, the night that I was wounded at Sened, Colonel Darby asked for volunteers to carry the wounded back. Randall Harris here was the first to volunteer. A lot of people don't realize this today. That night on that raid, I lost my right leg. And Randall, if it hadn't been for men like you, I wouldn't be here today. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Garland Ladd. And Randall, sitting in the audience tonight are two other Rangers who were wounded in Tunisia, Sergeants Phil Stern and Ed Thompson. Right there. July 10th, 1943, you, First Sergeant Randall Harris, land with a company of Rangers at Gila, on the southeastern coast of Sicily. Objective, clear the beaches of opposition, capture the town. Intelligence reports show that enemy defenses are strong. It takes the Rangers to lead the way. Here are some of the Rangers who were at Gila that day 14 years ago. Major Walter Nye, Executive Officer, 4th Battalion. Captain Stuart Avery. Corporal Hank Shippey. Major James Altieri. Jim Altieri, you fought alongside Randall Harris through all of the Ranger campaigns, and you've written a book called Darby's Rangers. Now, you come on up here, Randall, and right beside Jim. And Jim, suppose you tell us about Randall Harris and his action at Gila.
Well, Randall's outfit landed on the hottest, most strongly defended, and most heavily mined part of the beachhead. His whole, I would say about half of his platoon was lost, including his company commander, Lieutenant Wojcik. Harris himself was very, very badly wounded in the stomach and in the groin, but he took his canteen belt and covered his open wound. Then he took over command of the company and led it on the attack against the enemy pillboxes. Then he and his men, the remaining Rangers, stormed into Gila and engaged the enemy with fierce, furious, hand-to-hand, door-to-door street fighting. They practically annihilated the defenders, and thanks to Randall and his company, they helped play an important part in the winning of the Sicilian bridgehead.
I finally had to insist that Randall go back to an aid station.
In 1943, commanding officer of the 4th Ranger Battalion, now supervisor of training at Fort Benning, Georgia, Colonel Roy A. Murray.
Well, Ralph, we had to get Randall back there at the aid station, and he stood there holding his stomach together the best he could, while the other men with the less serious wounds were assisted. And for his gallant efforts there, I recommended him for the Distinguished Service Cross and for a battlefield appointment as a second lieutenant, and he got them both.
You, Randall Harris, are the only one of Darby's Rangers, along with Colonel William O. Darby, to receive the Distinguished Service Cross. We might suppose that your injury would have put you out of action for a long time, Randall. Did it, Colonel Murray?
Well, from July to September of 1943, the end of September, he was in the hospital. And then he took AWOL, in reverse, of course, and joined the battalion again in time to go into the mountains of Anafro, where we had some very rough Ranger fighting.
Yes. Thank you, Colonel Murray, Jim Altieri, and Rangers all. It's the fighting hearts of men like you that'll keep America strong. November 1943, the Banafro Mountains, Italy. Randall Harris, commander, F Company, wounded in action, hospitalized. January 29th, 1944, the Anzio beachhead. Randall Harris, wounded in action, hospitalized. For your action at Anzio, you're awarded the Bronze Star. The compounding of all your wounds is so severe, Ran, that you're returned to the United States for hospitalization, right? And while your career as an active fighting man is over, the legend of Randall Harris, the quiet, shy man who became an inspiration to a whole fighting unit, lives on as the war continues to its end. Now, there's a soldier here tonight, Ran, who knows that legend very well. His was the first voice you heard tonight. He's traveled 3,000 miles to pay tribute to you. The man who commanded the 5th Army in World War II, General Mark Clark.
Randall Harris, you and the other Rangers here tonight, and Rangers watching this program, were destined from the start for a glorious niche in history. The man selected to command the Rangers, Colonel William O. Darby, was one of the finest men that I ever knew and the greatest soldier. He was killed in the final days of the Italian campaign, up front with his men, just as he would have wanted it. Ranger battalions were in the thick of the fighting. They participated in 6 World War II campaigns, in 13 full-fledged battles, and were among the most decorated men in the American Army. And when the fighting was over, only 199 out of 2,000 came home unscathed. As the president of the Citadel, the Military College of South Carolina, I am trying to instill that same glorious spirit in my cadets who will be the future leaders of tomorrow. And I'm sure, Randall, that you have inspired them tonight as you have young people all over.
Thank you, General Mark Clark, for that tribute to a valiant group of men. Thank you, General. How you doing here, young man? Trying to take your breath away. Your mission accomplished in war. You set out to fulfill a dream. And how your life takes on even greater meaning, we'll see in a moment. Right now, we want to call your attention to this ad in the current Reader's Digest. The marks of war have put new lines in your face, Randall Harris, but the heart that beats quietly beneath has a yearning for love and compassion. Love comes in November of 1944 when you married Dixie Hale in San Diego, California. And here is your wife, Mrs. Randall Harris. Here's Dixie. Dixie, you sit down there beside Randy. With Dixie at your side, you can begin to make a dream take shape. What happened to Randy, Dixie?
Well, I went back to school to study to become a teacher. And he had some pretty rough times financially, but it was all worth it when we saw his dream coming true.
And here in 1958, it's reaching fruition. What are you doing now, Randall?
Teaching a class of mentally retarded children. Pastor Elvis.
There are 15 boys whom Randall teaches in an old schoolhouse, aren't there, Dixie?
Yes, he picks them up every morning and takes them out to the school. And in addition to teaching them, he helps prepare their meals, and supervises their play, and they've had some very interesting trips. The boys think he's pretty wonderful.
I'll bet they do. We know that your old car's kind of beaten up to carry the kids around in, Ran, and that it's in the garage for repair most of the time. So Ivory and the Edsel division of the Ford Motor Company would like you to have the station wagon of your dreams, this beautiful 1958 Edsel Villager with a Teletouch drive. Oh, look who's piling out of your car, your own children. Here's Martha and Dorothy and little Randy and Dixie Lee. And look who's coming here, little Howard Andre, whom you named in honor of one of your closest ranger pals who was killed in action. Whoa, you better take that load over there and sit down, I think. Oh, my, we sure surprised Daddy, didn't we? As you can see, Rand, this Edsel will easily carry all the boys that you have to pick up every day, and when you take your family on camping trips, as you do, there's plenty of space to spare for your sleeping bags and other equipment. What'd you say, Randy?
Dad has a tie, too.
Yeah, Daddy's got a tie just like yours. That's it. Of course, we can't forget the two people who are most responsible for your being here tonight, your mother and father, Mr. and Mrs. Wilbur W. Harris of Paso Robles. Here's Mother and Dad. There's that son of yours, sir. You go on over and sit down, and they'll come and stand behind you there. Well, gather around, family and friends. Dixie, we'd like you to have this gold charm bracelet right here, designed by Marshall Jewelers of New York City. There you are. And Randall, when our researchers, incidentally, Randall, oh, yes, my goodness, when our researcher was in Paso Robles to gather information for your story, by the way, here's a watch and type clasp and cufflinks from Marshall, too, there, that Ivory wants you to have. When our researcher was there, he met you, and you thought of him only as a friend of Frank Rules, you know. Well, he heard that you asked Frank if you could borrow a tape recorder to use in your work with your students. Well, you won't have to borrow anyone's recorder anymore, because just let him run around, Mommy, that's all right. Ivory would like to present you with this RCA Victor portable tape recorder. And there you are. And we also know you've needed film equipment in the work that you're doing, so Ivory would like to present you with this Bell & Howell motion picture camera and this 16mm sound projector. There's plenty of film to go with it, too. All right, you hold this glass of water. Don't let... I almost gave it to the general. Would that have been right? I don't know. I never know what to do with a general around, you know. But no, with this fella, he's a great man. And we'd like to mention that you'll be able to see the Ranger Battalion in action in a new film just released, Darby's Rangers. I know you want to see it. Randy, this is your life. Randall Harris. The years bring about changes in a man's face. They dim past experiences, but they add to the spirit and the heart. Your heart and spirit show us that there are men in America in whom we can place our confidence. Good night. God bless you.
Means far less decay.
Look, Mom, no cavity.
And by new liquid Prel that's extra rich to leave your hair looking radiantly alive.
Next week, ladies and gentlemen, a powerful story of emotional conflict and social significance. Because of the nature of this story, we've had to get the consent of our guest of honor to be, so I can tell you tonight that next week, This Is Your Life, lovely star of Broadway and Hollywood, Frances Farmer. This is one program none of you will want to miss. Good night.
This Is Your Life is a Ralph Edwards production, produced by Axel Grunberg.